Hi everybody, it's Mr. Jackson. No blanket today, I've got Marilla here. And we are going to read chapter 5 of Everlost by Neal Shusterman. And we will be reading with permission of Simon Schuster. I'm going to go back to this little box before. Whether or not careless children actually sink down to the center of the earth, no one can say for sure. Certainly, many do disappear, but as it always seems to happen when no one else is looking, it confounds all attempts to discover where they actually go. The official term for sinking, coined by none other than Mary Hightower herself, is gravity fatigue. In her groundbreaking book, The Gravity of Gravity, Mary writes, "Do not believe rumors that children leave Everlost. We are here to stay. Those who can no longer be seen have simply fallen victim to gravity fatigue and are either at or on their way to the center of the earth. I imagine the center of the earth must be a crowded place by now, but perhaps it is the spirits of those of us residing there that keep the earth alive and green." So, chapter 5. Friends in High Places. Mary Hightower was not born with that name. She could no longer remember what her true name was, although she was relatively certain her first name started with an M. She took the name Mary because it seemed proper. It seemed like a proper motherly name. True, she was only 15, but had she lived, she would most certainly have become a mother. And anyway, she was a mother to those who needed one. And there were many. The name Hightower came because she was the very first who dared to ascend. That singular bold act of climbing the stairs and staking a claim had earned her a level of respect from others she could not have imagined. They were in awe of her, and many other Everlost children followed her lead. Realizing her position was now high in more ways than one, she decided it was time to share what she knew about Everlost with all afterlights. Although she had been writing for more than 100 years, she had only shared it with a small group of younger children she had taken under her wing. But the moment she became Mary Hightower, all that changed. Now, her writings were read by everyone, and what had once been a small group of children in her care had grown to hundreds. She had no doubt she would eventually be a mother to thousands. Some people thought of her as a god. She had no desire to be a god, but she did like the respect and honor with which she was now treated. Of course, she did have her enemies, and they called her less flattering things, but always from a safe distance. Today, her view from the top floor was magnificent, and sometimes she swore she could see the whole world from here. Yet, she knew it was a world that had gone on without her. Far below, the traffic of the living world passed, dots of buses and taxis in constant congestion. Let them go about their business, she thought. It means nothing to me. My concern is this world, not theirs. A knock at the door drew her attention away from the view. In a moment, Stradivarius stepped in, a mousy boy with tufts of tightly curled blonde hair. "What is it, Very?" "A finder's here to see you, Miss Mary. He said he's got something really good." Mary sighed. Everyone called themselves finders these days. Usually they had never actually found anything of importance. A scrap of paper, a piece of driftwood, maybe. The true finders had far better goods. They were masters of what they did, and knew all the circumstances that could cause an object to cross over into Everlost. The true finders were few. Is this someone we've seen before? I think so, said Stradivarius. And I think he's got real food. This news caught Mary's attention. Although she tried not to show Very how much, she was good at keeping her emotions to herself. But if the finder truly had food that had crossed over from the living world, it would be hard to contain herself. Show him in. Very slipped out and returned with a young man about 13 years old, wearing nothing but a bathing suit, its waistband hidden by a pasty root beer belly. Well, thought Mary, we can't choose the moment and manner of our crossing. Just as this boy was condemned to travel eternity in a wet bathing suit, she was consigned to the most uncomfortable school dress she owned. The only good thing about it was that it was green and matched her eyes. Hi, Miss Mary, the finder said respectfully. You remember me, right? He smiled, but his mouth stretched too wide, and he had far too many teeth, giving the impression that she could tip back the top of his head like a boy-shaped cookie jar. Yes, I remember you. You're Speedo from New Jersey. The last time you came, you brought me an orange, wasn't it? Grapefruit, he said, thrilled to be remembered. It had been a very long time since she had seen this particular finder, but how could she forget that bathing suit? What did you bring today? His smile stretched even wider. Now he was teeth all the way to his ears. I brought something fantastic. How would you like a little dessert? Dessert? Said Mary. Please don't tell me you've brought some of those horrid fortune cookies. Clearly, Speedo was offended by the suggestion. I'm a finder, Miss Mary. I know better than to waste your time with fortune cookies. I won't even touch them. That's very wise, Mary told him. And I'm sorry I didn't mean to insult you. Please, show me what you've got. He hurried out and returned with a box that he set on the table. You may want to sit down, he told her. When she didn't, he removed the lid to reveal something Mary thought she'd never have the good fortune to see again. A birthday cake. There was no sense in trying to hide her astonishment, and yes, perhaps she should have sat down because the sight of it made her feel faint. This wasn't just a slice of bread or a gnawed chicken bone, as many of the food finders brought. This was an entire birthday cake. Round and white, completely unmarred. It said, Happy 5th birthday, Susie. She had no idea who Susie was, and she didn't care, because if she was having a birthday, she was one of the living, and the living were not her concern. Mary lifted her finger, then turned to the finder. May I? Of course. Slowly, carefully, she dipped her finger down and touched it to the cake, dragging it over the tiniest edge, feeling the frosty sticky to her fingertip. She pulled her finger back and put it in her mouth to taste. The explosion of flavor was almost too much to bear. It took over all her senses, and she had to close her eyes. Vanilla buttercream, so perfectly sweet. It's good stuff, huh? Said Speedo. I was going to eat it myself, but then I thought my favorite customer might want it. And he added, that's you, just in case there's any doubt. And he added, that's you, just in case there was any doubt. Mary grinned and clapped her hands together as she realized how the finder had come across the cake. You wait at birthday parties. How very clever. Everyone knew that the only foods that ever crossed over were foods lovingly prepared, and it only happened when the lovingly prepared food met an untimely, unlikely end. Where better to find such food than a birthday party where mothers baked the love right into the batter? That's brilliant, Mary said. Absolutely brilliant. Speedo looked nervous and hitched up his bathing suit. A nervous habit. Since it was it was in no danger of falling down. You're not going to tell anyone, are you? I mean, it's trade secret. If people knew where I go to find food, everyone else will do the same, and I'll be out of business. I won't tell a soul, Mary said. But you have to tell me one thing. How many birthday parties do you have to sit through until a cake crossed over? He puffed up proudly. 378. Mary shook her head. You must be sick of birthdays. Hey, you do what you've got to do, right? Then he walked around talking about the cake like it was a used car he was trying to sell. It was something to watch, though. That little kid reached up and pulled the whole cake right off the table before they could even put the candles on it. It smashed in a heap on the floor. But as you can see, it left a lasting impression on the table where it sat. The ghost of a birthday cake just waiting for me to take. Mary looked at the cake and thought about dipping her finger in it again, but stopped herself. It would be too easy to keep on eating it and not stop until the last crumb was gone. So, said Speedo, what do you think it's worth? What are you asking? How am I supposed to know what I want when I don't know what you got to give? Mary considered this. The cake was worth 10 times anything she had ever traded for. This, she knew, was the finder's gold mine, and he might never find another one. He deserved a fair and honest trade. Mary crossed the large room to a chest of drawers and pulled out a set of keys. She tossed them to Speedo, and he caught it. Keys, he said. I found lots of keys. They ain't no good unless the thing they unlocked also crossed into Everlost. And that never happens. Something very strange happened in the living world a few weeks ago, Mary told him. A man sent his car into one end of a car wash, and it never came out the other end. No one has any idea what happened to it. He looked at her, his face a mix of hope and disgust. And what did happen to it? Sunspots, huh? If you had read my book, everything you ever wanted to know about vortexes but were afraid to ask, then you would know that sunspot activity tends to create vortexes from the living world to ours, through which living world objects sometimes fall. Okay, said Speedo. Sunspots, yeah. Mary grinned. In a parking stall at the north side of Old Penn Station, you'll find a silver Jaguar. I don't travel much, so I doubt I'll have much use for it. It's yours if you promise to bring me all your best food finds. She could tell that the finder was excited about the car, but was a very good negotiator. Well, he said, I already do have a pretty sweet ride. Yes, Mary said. You talked about it last time you were here. As I recall, it's more trouble than it's worth because you can never find a place to park it. Yeah, he said, I guess I could do with something smaller. Okay, it's a deal. He shook her hand a little too forcefully, finally letting his true excitement show. A jag, wow. His smile stretched right into the middle of his ears, and Mary simply had to say something about it. Someone had to. You should try to remember that the living only have 32 teeth. He looked at her, stunned by her directness. 8 incisors, Mary continued, 4 canine, 8 bicuspids, and 12 molars. If you've got wisdom teeth. Oh, he said, getting red in the face. It's clear you put a lot of importance in your smile. But when you think about it too much, it starts to take over. Even before he turned to leave, Mary could see the information taking effect. His mouth was shrinking back to sensible proportions. In her book, Spectral Visions, An Afterlife's Guide to Looking One's Best, Mary Hightower writes, if at times you find others looking at you strangely and you don't know why, chances are you're losing touch with your own self-image. That is to say, your body, your face, is beginning to distort. Remember, we look the way we look only because we remember looking like that. If you forget your eyes are blue, they may turn purple. If you forget that human beings have 10 fingers, you may suddenly end up with 12. A simple remedy to image loss is to find a picture that you think resembles you. And if you happen to have crossed over with it, with an actual picture of yourself, all the better. Study the picture. Take in as much detail as you can. Once the image is firmly in your mind, you'll start looking like your old self in no time. Never underestimate the importance of remembering how you looked in life. Unless, of course, you'd rather forget. So, that was chapter 5. Now, time for a couple questions. First, last time I asked you about Mary Hightower because we've been hearing about her. I asked you what you thought she was like, and now you finally got to meet her. So, was Mary Hightower the same as what you thought she would be like? Next question, if you thought Mary Hightower was the same, how was she the same? And if you thought she was different than you expected, how was she different? Then next, Mary traded Speedo, a birthday cake, for she traded him a Jaguar, very fancy, expensive car, for a birthday cake. Would you trade a birthday cake for a Jaguar? Is that a fair trade? Next, why did it seem like a fair trade in the book to trade a cake for a car? Why did that seem fair to the two characters? So, hope you guys are having a good weekend. I miss you. I will talk to you later. Bye.